Hi all, my name is Upasna and I welcome you to this live session on donut charts in Tableau. The main aim here is to help you utilize a donut chart as a tool, not only for engagement but also for comprehension efficiency. And we shall do so by answering a few questions. First of all, what is a donut chart? Second, what's the difference between a donut chart and a pie chart? Next, we are going to look at how to build a donut chart in Tableau, followed by the benefits and pitfalls of a donut chart. And finally, we are going to conclude the session. Now, I've always believed that great visualization is achieved when we enable our audience to gain the maximum amount of insight with the least amount of effort. And that is exactly what I intend to do through this session right here. So without much ado, let's get started. So what is a donut chart? Now, to understand what a donut chart is, we need to first know about its predecessor, the pie chart. So what is a pie chart? Now, pie chart is a circular statistical graph or visualization that is divided into slices, basically to illustrate numerical proportion. As you can look at it, it looks pretty much like a pie that's been cut into separate sections, unequally though. Now, in a pie chart, the arc length of each slice is proportional to the quantity it represents. But there's a little bit of a problem. Now, pie charts are often criticized for attracting too much focus of its viewers on the proportion of the areas of the slices. Now, this obviously incites comparison of one slice to another, and then ultimately the comparison of one slice to the chart as a whole. Now, this makes it very tricky to see the differences between slices, especially when you try to compare multiple pie charts together. Now, we need a chart which somehow remedies this problem by de-emphasizing the use of this area. Behold the donut chart. Now, a donut chart somehow remedies this problem, and again it de-emphasizes the use of that area. A donut chart is essentially a pie chart that you saw previously, except for it has a hole in the center, or the central area has been cut out. A donut chart basically invites the readers to focus on reading the length of the arcs rather than comparing the portion sizes between the slices. Also, this chart is more space efficient than a pie chart because you can pretty much use the central hole to fill in with data or information if you like. But what we need to understand about the donut chart, or rather both of these charts, is what brings about this stark difference in performance. In one word, the answer is perception. So let's go ahead and discover what is the difference between a pie chart and a donut chart. To make it easier for you all, I'll switch to my demo machine, which is the Tableau desktop app. If you want to look at a tutorial solely concerning the Tableau desktop app, we have a bunch of them on our playlist and a particular tutorial video if you like. I'd happily link that in the description box below as well. So moving on, you've probably all seen a pie chart before. It's a big circle cut into pieces, can't really miss it. We saw it a few minutes ago in our first section. And a donut chart, as we also just saw, is essentially the same thing except for that it has somewhat a smaller circular cutout in the middle. So it turns this very filled heavy pie into a somewhat hollow donut. But I've decided to make it easier for you all, and here's a side-by-side image of them both. Now, there may seem like a fairly minor difference between the two, but something important happens upon this timbit removal that illuminates the complexities of the human brain and the visual perception. And my main intention of this session is mainly to make you guys understand what goes on in the human brain to perceive these two so differently. So let's go ahead and look at a pie chart first. So this is a pie chart. Now first, when you guys looked at it, notice how you did. Chances are your eyes directly went to the center of this pie chart, at least at first. Now, because pie charts are filled in, you view them as a whole. You see the circle and judge the pieces according to its areas. It's pretty simple. And then there is this donut chart. Now, because donut charts are hollowed out, there is no central point to attract your attention. So where do your eyes go instead? I'd like to leave your answers in the comments. Okay. So if you're like most people, at least I'm like most people, I'm pretty ordinary, your eyes travel around the circumference and judge each piece according to its length. As a result, you can also think that a donut chart is almost like being a stacked bar chart which has been curled around itself. Can't visualize it? Let me help you. Here is a stacked bar chart, which is the corresponding chart to the previous donut chart you just saw. Now can you picturize it? Very well then. So why does it matter whether you read something by area or by length? Well, our brains process these two properties very differently, and we as humans are only good at one of them. So humans are exceptionally good at judging linear distances. Let's take an example. If you want to throw something at a tree in a distance, okay? I don't know why you're doing that. Maybe you're anti-green, but let's just take that example. If you want to throw something at a tree in a distance, the gray matter in your brain, which is the part of your brain which processes information, will run all the calculations to get the right trajectory and fulfill this weird anti-tree vendetta agenda of yours. You can easily tell if something is taller, wider, longer, or shorter. Basically, what I'm trying to say is single dimension comparisons are pretty straightforward. Now, areas to human brains aren't so easy. Unless the difference is blatantly obvious, it may take you a moment to compare objects of different sizes. And if you're anything like me, you'll cheat and use the linear distances anyway. Because what I do is I check the height and width and estimate the rest. So when a reader sees a circle subdivided into sections, they are going to want to compare section sizes anyways. Even if a comparison isn't your goal, and it has got nothing to do with the graph's core message, comparing sizes is sort of like an automated reaction when you see a pie chart. So what is it that the donut chart has to offer? Simplistically, two things: clarity and spatial efficiency. Okay, consider this particular donut chart. Now, pie chart actually offer three separate options. You compare ratio of angles, ratio of areas of each wedge or slice, or at least you can use the length of the outer circumference. Now, the donut chart only offers the last one. Though it gives you both an inner and outer edge to work with, it basically only gives you the length of the outer circumference or the arc to utilize as your record size. Now, this particular complexity of the pie chart is rarely a benefit. A typical audience will contain individuals who will prefer each of the three methods. This makes the distortion of a pie chart far more common than people realize. Now, people who prefer pie chart over donut chart often do so because pie chart offers more stylization. You can make a pie 3D, you can tilt it, you can explode it, you can fill it with interesting patterns or skins. You can even make different shapes out of it. But all of these options will mostly just distort your graph. At least a portion of your audience will not be able to understand it. Now, I'm not saying that a donut chart cannot get distorted. It is just much easier to avoid in the case of a donut chart. So as long as the edge lengths remain fixed, which basically means you're not getting a tilted view of the chart, the graph should remain very true to its data. Now, the second point I had to come to was spatial efficiency. Now, for fans of Edward Tufte, this is a major theme of what he writes. Tufte rails most against wasted ink. Then there's too much white space. But both can be issues. Filling a page with meaningless color creates clutter and slows down comprehension, while white space that is not purposely put there in your graph is equally troubling. Now, the pie chart suffers greatly from the first problem. By definition, there is nothing you can do about it. Any effort to limit that extra ink will only leave you with a donut chart instead. But the donut chart suffers from the latter. So why trade too much ink for too little? The answer is focus. The white space of a donut chart draws the eyes of the audience. As we mentioned before, it is always the center of the circle where you look at first. So use that space. that space is perfect for a total, a lift comparison, or a trend arrow. Honestly, in my opinion, you should be able to cleanly fit all three as I've done in this chart in front of you. Now that we know why you need to use a donut chart, let's move on to our Tableau desktop and see how you can build one. So I'm basically aiming to recreate this particular donut chart, which is based upon the categories of products of this superstore and the number of sales made by each product. Now, as I've just mentioned, I'll be using the sample superstore provided by the Tableau service to be creating this particular graph. So now let's start by opening up a new sheet. As you can see, this is the sheet 25. Now, while there may be many ways to create a donut chart, this method is my favorite because it is more efficient and it is more goof proof. So let's start with this marks card. This particular card here is known as the marks card. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select pie chart here because again, pie chart is the predecessor of the donut chart. We are going to start out with a pie chart. Then we're going to select the category and bring it to color. As you can see, there's a different color for office supplies, technology, and furniture. And the legend is here on the right. The legend is here on the right. And there are the three colors right here. And I used this card from the marks card to make sure that each category is represented in a different color. You can also go ahead and change the colors if you like, but I'm pretty fine with these as it does not hamper the visibility of any of the categories. Okay, next I'm going to take the sales, the number of sales, and I'm going to put it on two things. First is the size. So basically, the bigger the size of the sector, the more the number of sales. The next thing I'm going to put it on is the label. So now you can see an exact number that is represented by each of these sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this slightly bigger, a little bigger, and I'm going to bring this to the center for better visibility. Let me just resize it so you guys have a better view. Okay, done. Okay, so now that I have done this, I have already made my pie chart. Now let's start turning it into a donut chart. So I'm going to go to this measures column and pick out number of records. This is basically the total number of records that there is. And from sums, I am going to pick, I'm going to change the measure to minimum. Now I'm going to do that one more time for the inner circumference of my donut chart. So I take this, drag it to rows, and again select minimum. Now as you can see, we have two different pie charts. Let me just reduce. Okay, now it's really big, so let me just reduce the size of these. Yeah, well then. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this second green pill and I'm going to choose the dual axis option as we are trying to merge both of these into one. And if you look properly into the marks card, you can see that there are two sections for both of these pie charts. Right now they're overlapped on top of each other, but here you can see there is a section called minimum number of records, that is the first one, and then you have minimum number of records in bracket 2, which is the second one. So I'm going to go to this second section and I am going to remove all of these pills from here. And then I'm going to go to size and reduce it. Not very good at this, pardon me. And then I'm going to go to color and select white to match the background. It's at full opacity. And here you have a donut chart. Finally, I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to uncheck this show header option. Alright, now you have your donut chart. Now try and understand this. Visualization is perceived more like a science, but visualization is an art. Honestly, this is not an opinion piece of mine. Really, my opinion on pie charts and donut charts shouldn't matter to anyone. Too many reports and visualizations are already built on opinion and subsequently are quite flawed. That is not to say that nobody's opinion or the opinion of the audience is not important. Visualization is an art, and the only limitation to this is your mind. So with that, let's go back to our presentation where we can discuss a few drawbacks that are there in donut charts as well. Now, as I mentioned, donut charts have their drawbacks, of course. Now, while they are easy to read, they're still not the greatest for comparisons within the same graph. And if I might say, they're downright terrible for comparisons with two different graphs. Now here, I was trying to show a daily percentage of something. I can't tell you what for privacy reasons. And it increased after the October break. I thought I'd be all avant-garde and go nuts with these donuts. That was a bad pun, I'm really sorry. And this was a really bad decision. The one thing this monstrosity does do well, though, I have to give it credit, is illustrate how hard it is to compare between donuts. For example, let me pick out a handy spotlight here. Can you tell me, as the audience, if you look closer, which one of the blue segments is larger? Is it 11:15 or 11:16? These two I'm talking about. Is this larger or is this larger? Well, unless and until you have like a 30/20 vision, it is really hard to tell. So what could I have done with this data instead? Well, since I wanted a before and after comparison, I could have easily used a bar graph. This bar graph makes it much easier to see how dramatically the percentages rose after the October break. Of course, the graph here still invites the reader to look at each date individually. So if I add two annotations for the before and after averages to draw the attention to the changing trend, the individual bars can still be a little distracting. If I instead wanted the readers to focus only on the change in averages, I could have just done a simple bar graph. This so easily compares the two numbers, simple yet effective. Now you can see the pre-break average and the post-break average. It isn't flashy, but it gets right to the point. It would have been the most efficient, effective way for me to convey my message. So let's just take this oath to, I don't know, live and learn and cringe at our past faults, I guess. Now, to compensate for this deficiency, I usually prefer to use charts like this, which is a single pie or a donut in a complete set, where your audience is only looking at it for a quick visual, for information distribution. But the lone chart will never be able to convey a depth of information that is very actionable or very satisfying. Let me explain to you on Tableau. Now, to compensate for this deficiency, I prefer to use these charts in sets. A single pie or a donut chart may be all you need when your audience is only looking for a quick visual distribution. But that as a lone chart will not be able to convey a depth of information that is very actionable or satisfying. A set or a cluster of charts like the one you see in front of you, this is a dashboard with the executive overview profitability in all states of America, basically will help you compare and contrast changes. It effectively adds an additional dimension to your graphic. This could be across time, population, sales, and so on. It'll also allow you better leverage the legend, in which case you will need just one legend, and then you can use this particular graph to cross-highlight other graphs. Now that is a great feature for this particular graph. The color palette will now serve as a connector as well to other graphs. And for the donut, you can exploit multiple central focus points to convey a message or call out important information. And this is where a donut chart looks best. Now, I hate to write off an entire category of graph, but more often than not, donut is a better option than a pie. When a reader sees a circle subdivided into sections, they're going to want to compare section sizes, even if the comparison isn't your goal. If you do want your reader to compare segments, other types of graphs are a much better option. To be honest, you can talk about your stacked bar graphs or your donut charts. And if you don't want the comparison, these round charts make the wrong choice anyway. Aside from stylistic reasons, I can't really think of a good reason to use the pie chart instead of a donut chart. Can you now? If you can, let me know in the comment section below. Which one do you prefer, the pie chart or the donut chart, and why? Now, this particular session was designed to introduce some important components of great visualization and call out some important considerations when deciding between what chart types to use and why you should use a donut chart in particular. But returning to our initial call out, visualization may be treated as a science, but it is an art. Considerations are not fixed rules. You can go ahead and use just the donut chart for all you like. As long as you can balance style and creatively put it, it should serve as a great tool in your arsenal. So go ahead, graph on. Use these visualizations to their best and exploit them for the insights that they give you. With that, I close this session. My name is Upasana. Thank you and have a great day.